My first 3 years of ministry was in music, in directing choirs, leading congregational music. Also, I was responsible in the Whittier Church as director of education for the educational program of the church, which included a 400-pupil Sunday school and a 150-person youth group of junior, senior high, and college students. This was all on a part-time job while I was still in seminary. I was at camp with my senior highs when one of the pastors asked me if I wanted to be a senior pastor someday, and I told him that that was very much my greatest desire. He told me that he was going that day to Los Angeles to the City Mission Society, and he would tell them of my desire. In no time, I received a call to come in for an interview. The church at Woodland Hills was without a pastor, and I was invited to interview there. Jean and I left Whittier, our home, and traveled to the other side of Los Angeles for what seemed an eternity along Ventura Boulevard, no freeways at that time. Nancy and Ron were with us. Ron was a 5-month-old baby. The interview went well, and I was offered the pastorate, and I began in November 1st, 1952. I remember that we moved into the parsonage right next to the church on Halloween Day. We were royally welcomed, and we began this 2-year-old church with 60 members as pastor, in which we were not only the preacher and administrator of the church program, but also the custodian, secretary, fundraiser, visitor, and all the other tasks of the church. It proved to be a great church. Very soon the Sunday school began to grow. Our sanctuary and one-room building was inadequate, for our attendance had grown to over 200. After 6 years at Woodland Hills, I began to wonder if I should move on to another church. Most pastors served 3 to 5 years at that time. I went to the executive of the City Mission Society to ask him. Dr. Gary was a godly man, and he counseled me by saying that long pastorates were so meaningful as you saw young people grow and marry and experience the dedication of their babies. So I went back and went to work again. We lived beside the church for 6 years now, and more the church and school imposed on our home. We lacked privacy. An opportunity came for us to buy a home about a mile away in a new subdivision. It essentially was a brand new home with a lovely fireplace and 4 bedrooms. The only difference was that we had to convince the church to give us a housing allowance instead of furnishing a house, and I had to find $2,500 for a down payment. After much discussion, the church offered the housing allowance, and my father came up with the down payment. We owned our first home, a lovely brand new home. 12 years went by at Woodland Hills, and I went back to the same executive and asked if I should remain in the church. I got the same counsel as before, and I went home and applied myself for another 3 years, making the 15 years that we served in Woodland Hills. We hired a youth director by the name of Bill Beeman right out of seminary. After a couple of years, he received a call to go to Phoenix to serve as director of Christian education at First Baptist Church. A few years after my conversation with the executive about moving from the church, Bill met me at the camp where I had pastored our youth group at a summer camp for that week, and he asked me if I was open to consider a church in Phoenix. Little did I know that Bill's good friend, Ralph Showers, was the chairman of the pulpit committee at Monte Vista. It was not long before I was told that the pulpit committee would be coming to our morning service. They wanted to meet with me in our home after the service. It was Ralph and the committee from Monte Vista, and they were excited about calling me to that church. They set up a time for us to visit around Thanksgiving time. What a weekend that was. After we got home and the first Sunday came, I received a call from Ralph, who told me that the church had just voted to extend a call to me. Would I accept? And I said to him, I accept the invitation. And he said, the whole church will be excited about your coming. I spent 12 years as pastor there. This was a great time in my life, for I believe I was in my prime of life for ministry in my 40s. In the early 50s, I received an invitation to be a candidate at the First Baptist Church, El Cajon. I often had thought if there was any one place that I'd like to live in the United States, it would be the San Diego area. I spent a weekend there preaching, meeting with the congregation and boards and committees and the search committee. They wanted me to return for a second time to preach, but I could not find a weekend because of the many weddings that I had that year. So they arranged for me to come on a Wednesday night. Some 200 people were there, and I was asked to come and be the pastor of the church. Our family moved to El Cajon in 1980, and I began ministry on August the 1st, 1980. I had started working on my doctorate degree in 1978, and it was recommended that I not move until I had completed that, but the opportunity came and I took it. In essence, I had to start all over again to establish new support groups without and within the church. The biggest task in completing my requirement was to write my thesis of about 150 pages. After much effort, the task was completed, and in 1985 I received my degree of Doctor of Ministry at Berkeley, California. In 1992, I retired from active ministry, and a month later began a fabulous interim ministry in 6 churches in Montana, 2 churches there, in New Jersey twice, Idaho, Colorado in 2 different churches, and in El Centro. The best part of the years I have completely retired, and my joy is to be able to share that time with my family.